I love being outdoors. Always have, since I'm a kid. There's something beneficial about it. It helps with diabetes, obesity, anxiety, depression. It's rejuvenating in a lot of ways. Kind of like with Superman or the Swamp Thing. Apparently only DC characters, I guess. When I was a kid, I can remember 4th grade. I just aching to go to recess, just to play outside and watch that clock, and so help me God, that thing ran backwards just to torture me. I think it still does that a little bit today. But you know, going outside is so cool when you're a kid because you get to play in the leaves. You get to make a fort. You get to make a snowman in the winter. You get to play in a sprinkler in the front yard in the summer. It's extraordinary. But nowadays, it's a little bit different. We lose that sense of wonder. It kind of reminds me of that movie, The Matrix. You see, man is waging a war with the machines that somehow or another we've forgotten we're still at war with. Now we're slave to the computers in a much different fashion. We're sitting in front of a computer at work only to go home to sit in front of the television and our cell phones. It's a situation, really. You need to go outside. Speaking of, we have Dr. Lou Weber on the podcast today. She's going to talk about going outside and the benefits, including a new book that she wrote. It's a lot of fun. You know, my mom used to tell me when I was a kid, why don't you go outside and blow the stink off of you? Good advice. Stay tuned, folks. Whoa. Welcome to the podcast. Today we have Dr. Lou Weber as your host, apparently. I'm going to take over and just go run roughshod, which, by the way, is more than fine. I can just walk out this door. I'm going to probably pull the fire alarm when I go out, though.
Gotcha.
And you guys can stay here wrapped up with these cords like a mummy, as far as I'm concerned. Dr. Lou, let me be the first to ask you, why are you here? I guess that doesn't make, out of all the people, this is the one interview I was really looking forward to, even though we did Mario and Chelsea, which, you know, how I feel about those two. So I was really happy that you agreed. I'm glad that you're here because there's so many things about the environment that we do that we don't understand and how important it is and such. But my first question is this. What is, when you're driving in your car, the one song that comes on that you just gots to dance to? I know there's one.
Well, I really like New Age music.
Like Yanni? Is that New
Yanni,
Age?
yes.
That's all I got.
Kevin Keller is my favorite.
I'm sorry?
Kevin Keller is a New Age artist.
The actor from...
No, somebody else.
Kevin Keller?
Kevin Keller. He's groovy, man.
He's
it's
groovy?
so soothing and natural sounds.
Yeah, saxophone player? Or
Oh,
what does
mostly
he do?
piano.
He's a new
Age
piano player.
piano player who just has the nature vibe to him.
Is
So
it kind of a slow jam, or do you play the living hell
really-
out of the key? Just
really slow jam.
really?
Oh yeah.
And then you do your dance to that?
Well, you know, my favorite genre of dance is West Coast swing. Who knew?
John, you got anything on that one? That's West. You don't know West Coast
West
swing?
Coast swing. So this is partner dancing, and the man is the frame, the woman. It grew out of Jitterbug, but
Okay.
of course that's 100 years ago. And so this is incorporates some rap type dance and some ballet and Michael Jackson. It's
This sounds
just-
like diametric
I know
opposition
it.
of dances.
I know it, but it's all very smooth. And again, they tend to play some of this very smooth music and beautiful partner music between
You dance
in my car.
to
West Coast swing
Yanni.
to
What was the guy's name? Kevin Klein.
Kevin Keller.
What? You got Yanni and Kevin Klein in the car with you, and you're dancing with a 2-person
West Coast swing.
dance thing by
Uh-huh.
yourself in the car.
Yeah.
Well, that's. You ever seen the movie Swingers with John Favreau, Vince Vaughn?
I don't think so.
Oh, it's a swing movie.
Ah, I got to see this.
Oh, you've never seen this?
No.
Oh, you're so money.
Okay.
You don't even know. You don't even know.
It's just called Swing.
You're just not trying to kill it. You're swatting. It's bear and a bunny. You're gonna have to come back to me. You see the movie. You come back to me. You tell me
Okay. All right.
that I just blew your mind off with Yanni and Kevin Kline,
changed my life.
and now you got Swingers. And Jon Favreau wrote this. This is
Okay.
Iron Man.
Iron Man.
Iron.
Gotcha.
That's how I believe how that's how you say that. That's an interesting. I'm going to process this, the entirety of this podcast, with you. I appreciate you coming to our podcast today. This is the third interview we've done here, and this is a little bit different because your heart and soul belongs in the world behind us. That's why we wanted to film here in Achatz Hall and show. We had a great idea of having the really nice catalpa trees in full bloom until the one day out of the whole entire month that obviously it blew off all the flowers and such.
Yes.
And you have written
Yes.
a textbook.
Just out.
See this? John, you getting that pretty good? Textbook. It's called Understanding Nature, Ecology for a New Generation.
Yes.
And who wrote this for you?
Person just said to me yesterday, I didn't think you were smart enough to write that
Thank you.
book. Yes. It's been the best compliment I've had so far. It just came
I
out
like that.
on May 16th.
Really?
Yes.
What's that take? This is a whole. I've written a few things in my life, but this is a whole new level of either commitment or nerdiness. I'm not sure. What's it take to make a textbook?
15 years.
Well, that's not too bad.
And it's been on my
15.
conscience for 4 decades. My first semester of graduate
Jeez.
school, the professor said, somebody needs to write an ecology textbook with a historic focus.
Why do you think he was so angry? He had his own
Because
things going on,
ecology
kinda.
textbooks then as now don't make sense. There's no story. It's a conveyor belt of information. There's no story. And ecology has a great story. It's only 150 years old. The science of ecology is only from Darwin's time, 1860s.
That's 150 years ago? I didn't know that.
More or less, yes.
I did not know that.
And it's a story with drama and heroes and villains who have now become heroes. Who knew Lamarck was right?
Yeah.
I know.
I didn't.
It's shocking.
I tell you right now, I wouldn't. I don't know who that is. Who's Lamarck?
Lamarck was Darwin's nemesis. Lamarck was the guy who said that elephants get a longer neck over time through evolution because they strive to do so, because they want to reach to the tops of trees. And
Therefore, they became a giraffe.
well, their neck got longer and longer. And Darwin said, that's not right. You get these slow changes over time because of natural selection. Well, guess what? Now that we are investigating genes, we find out that in some way, the genes do kind of plan evolution. It's in a chapter in the book.
I know I saw the name here, but I'm not familiar with that name, Lamarck, being the nemesis, the other side of this. Now, to my knowledge, I've never seen a long-necked elephant.
Right.
Ever.
No,
Am I missing
a giraffe.
Oh, so it is a giraffe.
Did I say elephant? I meant giraffe.
Did she say elephant or giraffe?
You did say elephant.
Okay, that's
Oh,
where.
jeez.
No, that's all right, because I don't know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
You're the.
A long-necked giraffe.
No, I get that. So that not. We've come full circle on this. I enjoy this because this is kind of information that we need. You may have a couple of typos and revisions.
I know.
If the elephant with a long neck is in this textbook, but that is kind of
Well,
true.
let me
though.
tell you about these genes because that's the more interesting.
Hit me.
Okay.
What do you got?
We've discovered that people who were in concentration camps, say as kids, who were 1930s in these and survived and were starved in the concentration camp, they have genes that turned on while they were in that stressful situation. Their genes turned on to make them obese later in life. And those genes in the turned on state get passed on to their offspring and then their offspring. And so those who come later are prone to obesity because their gene is turned on to want to eat all the time.
And that's a defense mechanism, you think, from back then? It was just a mutation that said, we need to get to the point where these people are
not a
getting
mutation.
more food back in here.
We didn't know that genes could be turned on and off. That's something
interesting.
we've discovered, say, in the last 30 years. And so it can last a couple of generations. Or the scary thing is, all of these chemicals that we can take into our bodies right now, sometimes those turn on toxins, viruses. Who knew, this is also in a chapter in that book, who knew that every virus and bacteria that infects us is planting part of their genes in all of our genes in every cell of our body? And sometimes those turn on and turn off certain things in our genome.
For the better or for the worse, though?
Usually it's for the worse.
Really?
Like every
That's how I
virus we've
feel.
ever had for a cold virus gets inserted into our genome in every cell of our body. And it's thought now that once we get an accumulation, as we grow older and older and older, and we get an accumulation of all these genes, it makes us dumber.
Oh, I could totally feel. I feel that way now. I must have had a lot of colds
Yeah,
growing up
yeah,
every week since I'm born, because that's how I feel now.
I know. That's how we all feel.
Why would it make you smarter? Because every, by the way, superhero, Marvel or DC movie I've ever seen, if you had a virus or a spider bite or some other crap hit you, whatever, it makes you better and stronger.
No.
So is what I know from the movies all wrong? That just can't be right. I just can't believe it.
I'm afraid they usually make it worse.
Really? That's unfortunate. Because I was looking forward to a good spider bite, unless it has a cold, apparently. Then I know
Don't
what to
get a
do.
virus in your ear either.
No, what a terrible thing that is.
I know.
And who know that there's people that we know that have ear viruses. You ever done an ear candle?
No.
I'm not kidding around. Years ago, I had an earache. I'm not sure why. And I was at a friend's house, and the mom said, you need to get yourself, have an ear candle in the other room, which, by the way, sounds like something I would fall for, or probably something I would do to other people. And you put your head on the table, and you stick this candle thing, it's a tube, in your ear hole, and you light it on fire. And it just sucks out that vacuum of the flame, sucks the stuff out of your ear. You can get them at GNC. I guess it's an Amish thing. I'm not kidding around. It's
Wow.
totally a thing, and it worked. I don't know what to make of that, but I felt like a real idiot with my head on the table and this thing burning down, and I could feel it getting hotter and hotter. And I thought, and they were filming it, so I thought, this is some
That'll
sort
be
of
in the next
blackmail.
book.
I'm going to write a chapter for you here.
Okay.
Ear candle. Something in here. That's something about the ecology. But it gets in there. You talked a little bit about Anna Comstock. This is a very interesting. It was she wrote, "Out of door life takes the child afield and keeps him in the open air, which not only helps him physically and occupies his mind with sane objects, but keeps him out of mischief. This is the age of nerve tension, and the relaxation which comes from the comforting companionship found in woods and fields is without doubt the best remedy for this condition." Why is that?
And she wrote that more than 100 years ago.
It was 1911,
Yes.
and she knew that then.
Yes.
Based upon what? Based upon what? What did she observe? What did she see?
She was an expert in teaching, and so she observed a lot of elementary school teachers. That was her job, to go around and watch elementary school teachers. And that was what she was observing more and more in the classroom. Students needed to be outside.
She wrote that then, in 1911.
Yes.
How much have things changed since 1911 with going outdoors?
Well, we've got authors writing about it again 100 years later because the situation has gotten even worse with students on screens, as we know.
All the time.
All the time. And addiction, as we know, and how dangerous that is. So, even more important, we evolved to be problem solvers in the outdoors. We evolved not to be looking, 1 foot in front of our face. Even our eyes suffer if we don't spend enough time outdoors, if we have a close focus all day long. And some of us are on screens more than 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Children, it's causing myopia. It's causing us to have eye problems. Right now, in the tall apartment buildings of these large cities in East Asia, where students almost never get outside, they do all their schooling in these high rises, they live their whole lives in the high rises. It's an epidemic of myopia, and it's predicted that even here in the United States, by 2050, more than half of all 8-year-olds will need glasses.
Really?
Yeah.
It's a serious problem.
Also,
I've noticed that, and it's also with what they call a cell phone neck.
Yes.
Technology neck. I'm not sure what the actual name for it, but it's having your neck down. It's almost at a 90-degree angle to your body, and people come in with neck problems. And I know our daughter had some of that problem for a while, and I went to a chiropractor, and he said, get off your cell phone, and that's just not going to happen. It's so available to everybody. I know when I was a kid that this is back in 1913. And the old RCAs that were on the floor that had the oak cabinet must have weighed like 500 pounds, and it would catch fire once in a while, and you just blew it out. And my mom would, just blow it out. It's because it'd have all the dust that came on the vacuum tubes. No, it needs to do that once in a while. I guess my mom was a Philo T. Farnsworth relative or something and knew all about it. And this thing would catch fire, but it was always, I put my face up as close as you could get to that TV screen. I thought it was wonderful. That's the radiation I'm dealing with. I was hoping to be a superhero with that.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the beginning. I was saying, well, you're going to hurt your eyes, you're going to do whatever. There's actually more to it than that. Mm-hmm. Then that's a serious problem.
know. Our parents used to say, you're going to hurt your eyes doing that, and it turns out it's true.
And it's worse than that.
Well, think about how we evolved. When we were outside all the time, in, the hundreds of thousands of years of our evolution, our gaze was on the horizon, looking for predators and threats, and that was the relaxed state. When we are looking at something very close, and books do it too, but screens also, then we're actually tensing the muscles in our eye. And there's a lot of muscles in our eyes. And so that's taking a lot of energy out of us, but it's also doing permanent damage to our eyes. If we can get outside, or even if we can just take breaks every 20 minutes or every hour, we can relax that eye. And the studies show kids don't need glasses as soon if they can just get outside for recess. Yes.
Because I'm all for that. I've noticed that over the years when I was a kid, that I lived in Mishawaka, so we used to get a lot of snow from Lake Michigan. And invariably, I'd get up around 9 a.m. This is just the winter time, but I'd get up at 9 a.m. and I would come home at 9 p.m. and frozen solid. My mom and my mom would always say, we didn't know if you were dead or alive. Well, I appreciate you going out looking for me. Because I'd just be digging out in the snow and making castles and forts and having snowball fights and probably a little theft in there someplace, I'm sure, because that's what we did at that age. But my mom was never concerned about that. Now you hear that if kids are outside, that's like they're so afraid of this world. But the reality of it is they need it.
Yes.
They need to be out there. They need to do something strange. You wrote in here, you have a quote from Bazell and Chalquist.
Yes.
It's a couple of really hard names. That our society is a collective, narcissistic, overscheduled, runaway train, and that's modern society. And the disconnect between that causes obesity, or as my parents would say, diabetes, suicide, depression, anxiety, chronic illness, and eye disease. So it's not just about eyesight.
No,
It's a culmination of a whole host of things.
I know.
Why is that,
Anxiety,
though?
depression, trouble concentrating.
What does it do? If we evolved in that way, true. That's where we came from. But why is that so important to be outside? Can't we just be in our domicile and arguing about whatever reality show to watch from now on? And can't we just do that? That's the evolution now, right?
Well, we're not evolving very fast compared to the hundreds of thousands of years before that,
Prior.
when we were outside getting vitamin D, getting different chemicals that may be in the atmosphere, getting chemicals that may be coming from plants, and working alongside in different tasks that would give us problem-solving skills. Like, for instance, working with the women or working with the men that are teaching you trades and are teaching you plant life, species identification, sustainable ways of making your home, repairing your home. The Native Americans around here, for instance, made a kind of wigwam, a round structure that was made out of cattails. These cattails were amazing. They kind of made a paste out of the powdery material in the fruit of the cattail. They would make this paste. They would make these sheets that were so wonderfully engineered. In hot weather, they would shrink, and then these were on the outside of the wigwam. So they would shrink and they would kind of make gaps. So in fair weather, the breeze would blow in.
Really?
Yeah. On a hot summer day, they would shrink and the breeze would blow in. In wet weather, they stretched, and that way it would cover up, and so the rain wouldn't come in. They could use these sheets as little sidewalks for mud control.
What was the chemical that was in a cattail that?
It's kind of a flour, and so if they made this into a paste and then made it into sheets, they would use these sheets for all kinds of construction materials and so forth.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Well, that's a pretty cool thing to have. You don't have that anymore.
No.
You don't have that world. What was the Native American? What were the tribes here?
Well, most recently, we knew them as the Miami.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
The time of Little Turtle and Tecumseh.
Because I'm from Mishawaka. What was the Potawatomi? Mishawaka was actually named after supposedly the chief's daughter, Princess Mishawaka. That's all I know. And this was, Fort Wayne used to be Kikianga.
Right.
Do you happen to know what that means? What the translation of that by any means is?
No, I don't.
I don't either.
Yeah.
One time I was having this odd dream, and it happened over a course like a month, and I went to see this counselor. It was kind of a bad situation, and I would come in and I would say, after a couple months of this, and I kept having a dream that I would turn into like a teepee, oddly enough. And like one night I'd be a teepee, and the next night I would dream that I turned into a wigwam, and then I would turn into a teepee the next night, and then a wigwam, and I'm telling this counselor, I turned into a teepee and a wigwam, and then one night I'm a teepee, the next night I'm a wigwam, and next night he goes, no, just relax. You're too tense. You ever heard that joke before? It's not my joke. I'm not sure whose that is. But
Wow. That's a good one.
I know. You're going to use that, I know.
I know it.
But feel free. We have it on tape someplace. Okay. You're probably not going to want to see that. This whole idea, let me go back to this. I got some things here.
That's impressive. You're very organized.
I'm trying to be. I got this little thing with my little spots.
That's amazing.
Usually this is what you use when you're signing divorce papers, which I'm waiting, quite honestly, if that'll happen soon. You talk a little bit, actually, in your thinking questions in a couple other places, you talk about the anti-evolution movement and how that's become, because up until like the 1950s, there was a lot of classes. There was talk about nature. There was talk about everything. And then come the 60s, it dies off in this anti-evolution. Take me through some of the history of that.
When ecology was trying to make it in the big leagues, the Ivy Leagues, specifically at Harvard, there were a couple of ecologists there who were trying to have the same stature as the molecular biologists, which was just coming on the scene in the 1950s. And so they wanted to make ecology less about natural history, which it had been about, identifying plants,
Okay.
knowing how the world of insects and communities of organisms live. Starting in the late 1950s, they tried to make ecology very theoretical and very mathematical, so that they would have the same stature as these other sciences like genetics and molecular biology. Well, they overdid it a little bit, and no longer was evolution and ecology accessible to every kid who just wanted to go look for bugs or whatever.
It was too scientific now?
Yes.
Really?
Which again gets back to one of the reasons why I wrote this book, is because when we get these conveyor belts of information now in ecology textbooks, and there's no story and there's no emotion, they actually had the strategy of wanting to take emotion out of the science of understanding nature. Because to be a geneticist, you have to be unbiased. And so they thought, to be an ecologist, you have to be unbiased, free of emotion, look at things mathematically, consider nature as a machine.
That's too bad.
I know.
Where's the emotion in that?
Where is the emotion?
Where do you get involved? Where's the passion?
When you see a beautiful catalpa tree and you see these flowers with this intricate pattern.
Yeah.
I mean, we can understand natural selection. These are how things evolved. We can understand the genetics of it. We can understand modern genetics of it. But it still is a wondrous thing. And that's what the psychologists are telling us about why being outside is so helpful for us.
Yeah.
The minute that we get out and we experience that awe, A-W-E, awe, we look at Mirror Lake or the catalpa blooms and we say, wow. That's the trigger that the psychologists say is bringing us lower blood pressure, relaxing our eyes.
Just by getting outside.
Just by getting outside and experiencing awe. And it's instantaneous.
Yeah.
It's faster than any drug. It's faster than crack and cocaine and all these other fentanyl. It is instantaneous. Our physiology relaxes.
Have you done a lot of those drugs to see if,
No.
if it compares?
Tested it myself. No.
It's good that you haven't. I was wondering if I didn't want you to come back and say, I lived in, well, you're into California, West Coast swing.
Yeah.
So isn't that where a lot of that stuff comes from? When you're having a textbook, obviously you want to try to reach students. So how do you get away from the science so much and get the students involved emotionally, get them vested into the world of ecology? How do you do that?
Well, it was a lesson when I came here to St. Francis 11 years ago, and I began teaching this required course in ecology, and it was mostly the health pre-professionals, pre-med, pre-vet, pre-dental, pre-PA. They wanted nothing to do with this course. They were not paying attention. And it took me a while, but I finally just threw my notes in the trash can, and one day I said to them, hey, do you know anybody with depression? Do you know anybody with anxiety? Do you know anybody with ADD? And some of them began looking up at me, and I thought, wait a minute. I'm on to something. They all know somebody with depression. They have depression and anxiety because of this runaway train we're on right now in society. And they looked up and I said, well, this semester we're going to consider nature as medicine and being outside as medicine, and how nature can be good for us, and how maybe you're going to prescribe being outside for your patients with these mental health
Do
issues?
doctors do that? Either medical doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, do they prescribe that kind of
Sometimes
therapy?
they do. And when I looked out at these students and I asked them, after we've been through some of these physiological studies, I said, would you ever think of prescribing this? 100% they nodded yes.
Really? After the fact?
Yeah.
After taking the class?
Not even after. They don't need much convincing. This was after 1 or 2 classes.
Really?
Yes.
They drank the Flavor Aid, as it were. It wasn't Kool-Aid, just so you're clear. Flavor Aid, because I don't want to slander Kool-Aid, because that's my heritage, my people. That's a strange thing, because in the last 6 years, I've had 5 big surgeries for a lot. I gave a kidney to my brother, blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
And some of that stuff had some secondary things that need to be fixed. And then about a year, almost 2 years ago, actually, coming up on it, I had broken my back when I was a kid, and it had just got to the point where I couldn't really walk anymore. I could stand for about 10 seconds, and then I'd have to crawl, and so it freaked my brother out when I saw him, because and he told my dad on me. It was kind of I had to answer to it. So
Wow.
finally had my lower back fused, and then shortly thereafter that I started having numbness in my right hand, and my neck had failed.
Wow.
And in fact, my spine had gotten so bad I'd lost 1.5 inches of height.
Wow.
So I was once 5'10", and when I went to the doctor, like 5'8.5", and I'm like, no, I am 5'10". And she, no, you're not anymore. That's how much that had compressed and the whatever. And the one thing that got me back going was walking outside. And there's probably about 3 days a week here. I'll walk around the campus. It's about a 15-minute loop, and I wear a sleeveless shirt, which we get a lot of complaints and issues with. I think HR's been notified, I think. And I go out there, and one of the conversations, I wear a sleeveless T-shirt so I can get some sun on me, because there is a value of that.
Absolutely.
There's something about being in that wind, in the smallness, I guess, that you feel, kind of seeing the trees, smelling the world.
And again, we evolved as walkers, as bipedal, as walking all day long on our feet, doing things, repairing our houses and that was life. If you didn't do it well, you didn't survive.
Is that why they call sitting is the new smoking?
Absolutely.
That's a terrible thing. I sit too much, quite honestly.
But, that's going to be the reality. But what the studies show is if we can at least get up once an hour.
Yeah,
walk,
that'd be all right.
It doesn't take much if we can walk to the other side of the building and then get out it'd be nice if we could get out for an hour a day, no matter the climate.
I have 2 grandsons. My wife and I have 2 grandsons, 4 and 2. And they run from the second they wake up, run and scream around the house the whole time, which I was doing that up to about 4 years ago myself. I had some other problems, other issues going on myself. You talked about wicked problems and that we're in a new epoch now, that we're in something different. And when did that start happening? When did this change? When human beings start becoming the hard polluters, throwing carbon dioxide out there for the world? When did that start?
Industrial Revolution.
Was it the 20s-ish?
I think it goes back further than that. I would say, especially in Europe, they had a little bit of a head start on us in the 1800s. Here, it was more like early 1900s when we became industrialized, and of course, cars and then telephones and.
So it's the Anthropocene.
The Anthropocene.
I would assume that means that this is the human epoch.
That's right.
That would mean that humans are destroying the world that we live around.
That's right.
You talked about in the last 50 years, human populations had doubled or quadrupled since the 1900s. And then we also have more carbon dioxide that has existed than the last 800,000 years. What natural things can we do? If I'm not a government official, I'm not a scientist who can invent whatever that would take that out of the air. What can I do What can I do differently? I know we got Trinity Lopez, a lemon tree here,
Mm-hmm.
which is a good tree. And also, I didn't know that those things had thorns, by the way. I don't know if anybody knew that lemon trees had thorns, quite honestly. What can we do?
There's a lot we can do.
What can we do?
Well, I plant a tree every chance I get.
What kind of tree?
I plant oak trees because, believe it or not, even though that's the dominant species for this biome, they're becoming more rare.
Really?
And so every opportunity I get to plant an acorn, I do it. Hickories and oaks are now starting to decline from this area.
Why is that, though?
They're long-lived, and with all the development, those are the ones that are being taken down, and it takes the longest time to grow them back up again.
I got you. I watched a fascinating show about trying to reforest the redwoods and the sequoias, and they only exist on about a 60-mile radius on the west coast. And they were talking about how difficult it is to get these trees to propagate because it about half survive. But we always hear, the sequoias and the redwoods, they have the ability to withstand fire, but that doesn't come for about 500 years. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, after that, if they survive that, they'll die of old age and thousands of years later on. It's an extraordinary tree, but it takes that long to get the canopy that high above the fire so it can survive.
Yes.
And the oaks must be much in the same way. It's the predominant tree. I got shagbark hickory in the backyard where I live, which I've heard that same thing. They're very scarce.
Thing. And shagbark hickory is even harder to propagate than oaks. So I worry about shagbark hickory even more than the oaks.
Because it's a hardwood? Is that kind of the case? Just slower growing hardwood versus pines?
Right.
I got you. That's a terrible situation to be in. The wicked problem, super wicked. What's more wicked? What's super wicked? If we got a wicked problem, deforestation, pollution.
So super wicked problems are problems that even if all of us want to do something about climate change, for instance, we are contributing to the problem even though we may wish to solve it with all of our might. All of us are dependent on electricity, for instance, and cars and transportation. So we're adding to the problem even though we want to solve it. And the other thing about a super wicked problem is that no one individual can solve this. No one government can solve it. No one corporation can solve it. It's going to have to come from a collective effort. And there's going to be no one who steps forward and tells us what we should do about climate change.
No one's going to take that chance?
No one's got the authority, or no one knows what the answer is. So the answer is that small communities have to take the lead. And that's what some communities are doing and teaching the rest of us. This is how you do it. This is how you begin to solve your problem. Small communities are deciding for themselves to be more sustainable.
Are you talking about in the book here on 326, Medellin, Colombia, talks about with a network of roadways and waterways shaded by 8,000 planted trees. Look at this. You wrote this, so this is not a surprise to you. And 350,000 shrubs shaded an area that is now almost 6 degrees cooler than any place else in the sunshine. 6 degrees. Just from that, oddly enough, 8,000 planted trees and 350,000 sounds like a monumental effort, but if you get a community together like you're talking about.
Well, and I'm proud to say the city of Fort Wayne is quietly planting trees as a result of these kind of
They are?
examples. Yes.
All over the place, just in...
Well, they're particularly targeting areas that have hot pavement. So if you look around the city, last year they started planting trees along sidewalks that have a particularly long stretch without shade.
Really? I don't know if I've really...
Hot pavement. Well, I mean,
really
they didn't...
been conscious of that.
I don't think that they really wanted to advertise this as a climate change strategy because people would react politically.
Oh, okay.
But it just makes sense that they're doing this.
Is it in most of these cases, do you find it's mostly a political thing, not to be too much on one side or the other, but it's become a political problem that seems to me that's an insurmountable problem, but if you do it quietly, you can get some sort of result from this.
Yes. It's a psychological problem. When I bring up climate change, people don't want to hear it. None of us do, because it's scary. And it's our future, and the future doesn't look particularly good. And it causes people even to go back to their addictions. They don't want to hear about this. I'd rather be on my phone and watch
Hold myself up in a
cute puppies and kittens
yeah.
than deal with this.
Have you seen a movie? It was out during the pandemic. Leonardo DiCaprio, and it was called "Don't Look Up." Adam McKay.
I didn't see it.
Talladega Nights.
I remember
It's
that.
a fascinating show about a meteor that's coming towards Earth, or asteroid, one of the two.
Right.
And it was denying this thing was don't look up, because you'd see this thing streaming towards the Earth, and it's such an extraordinary parable of the world that we live in. We can knowing this thing's out, these problems are out there, we can avoid them just by simply turning our back. And it's a very literal form of that kind of environmental idea, and it shows us kind of the bad part of that. Let's go back one thing. We talked about the camps that are coming up, that you talked about the ability to soothe skins, your wounds and such with nature. How did you ever figure all that out? Is that available on the internet? Is there another book out here I can read about getting myself a poultice with Crisco and willow bark and some other stuff?
Well, there's a whole genre of medicine on wilderness first aid, and basically it's just first aid skills. So it's not so much about a poultice, although you do what you can when you're in the wilderness, but mostly it's just good, clean first aid.
What exactly is a poultice? I use this word all the time. I don't know what it is. I think I heard it in the movie Doc Hollywood of Michael J. Fox.
Some kind of cream.
Is it what that is?
Gel that you put on to cure a skin problem.
Put some bismuth binitrate on there and whatever.
Some Braille cream and whatever else you've got.
That sounds like a good poultice. It's always got Crisco. I think that's the standard.
I think so.
How did they ever figure that out? You ever wondered, here, I can eat certain mushrooms. I can get a pizza with some mushrooms on it, but don't eat that mushroom over there. How much for trial and error?
I know. I mean, this is why we would love to know more about indigenous knowledge.
Right.
And there's a section in the book about that too. And there are certain things that my Miami friends don't want to share. And but actually, as I've been reaching out to folks in the Miami tribe here around in the Fort Wayne area, they're very willing to share seeds and to talk about plants, and they're trying to educate themselves about the ancient knowledge. Because through trial and error over all these tens of thousands of years, they know a few things about the local area and the plants and the way that you can make cattails into these amazing structures.
And not die from eating certain mushrooms.
Right.
That was always my biggest question. Who developed it? No, Steve, go ahead and eat that one. That one's safe.
Yeah. Who knew?
Who knew? I mean, you could assume apples would probably be pretty okay.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Right?
Even so, there's things I feed my cat first, and then I eat them.
Well, that's a good way to test that.
Yes.
I do that with my our 18-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
Why don't you try this out? And if later on you start to feel poorly, let's not discuss this any further. I think that works out very well. Dr. Lou, it's been a pleasure having you here. I'm a big fan of trees. I think my wife, when we first met, we were driving someplace one time, and I said, "Oh, hey, I want to take you down the road where my favorite oak tree is." And she was just astonished that somebody would have a favorite tree in Fort Wayne.
That is amazing.
And there's one actually where I live that's like the king of the forest, and I'll let you know sometime. It's one I've been trying to keep quiet because it's a magnificent tree, and I always worry that what would happen someday, that something happened to these wonderful trees, that it's just look at the world behind us.
I know.
We got the Good Lake, we got the Catalpas, which seem to be all hovering right now or where we live, right down the roads from here. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Hope you enjoyed the podcast, folks. Probably some of the noise you heard in the background is some hand dryers, so at least people are hygienic and this gets home. Thanks for watching.